When Sandra opened her small bakery on that gray and quiet morning, she had no idea her entire life was about to shift in a way she could never have imagined. The sky outside still held the last traces of dawn, soft and faded like an old memory, and the street was only beginning to wake. The smell of warm bread and sweet vanilla filled the room as she arranged pastries behind the glass display, her hands moving in a slow rhythm that she had perfected through lonely years of practice. She thought the day would be like any other, calm and simple, maybe a little dull, but safe. She never expected a ghost from her past to step through the door just minutes before she flipped the open sign. And she especially did not expect that the first words he would say would leave her breathless. The bell over the door rang, and she looked up without thinking. For a second, she forgot how to breathe. Keanu stood there, the same way he had years ago and completely different at the same time. His hair was a little longer, his shoulders seemed heavier, and there was a tired kindness in his eyes that made her chest ache in a way she thought she no longer could. She had not seen him since the day he walked away from her, not with anger or bitterness, but with the sad kind of silence that hurts more than shouting ever could. She had spent years trying to understand that silence, years wondering if she should have chased after him, or if letting him go had been the only respectful thing left to do. But now he was back, standing in her bakery as if time had folded in on itself, and the first thing he said, in that soft voice she remembered far too well, was, "Sandra, I need to tell you something. Something I should have said years ago." Her hands froze over the tray of muffins. The room felt suddenly smaller, as if the walls had leaned in to listen. She did not know what surprised her more, that he was here or that he looked like a man carrying a truth too heavy to hold alone. She didn't answer him right away. She simply stared, unsure if she was dreaming or if the universe had finally decided to give her a moment she had quietly wished for in the darkest corners of her heart. She wanted to ask him why he was here, what he wanted, if he had come to open old wounds or to finally close them. But instead she heard herself say something small and unsteady. "Keanu, what are you doing here?" He took a slow step toward her, and she could see the uncertainty in the way his fingers curled at his sides. He looked like someone who had rehearsed a speech 1,000 times, but suddenly forgot all the words. For a moment they just stood there, two people with a long and complicated history, surrounded by the scent of cinnamon and coffee and the quiet hum of memories that had never truly faded. "I thought I had more time," he finally said, "but something happened and I couldn't wait anymore." Her heart sped up, though she didn't understand why. Something happened. The phrase echoed in her mind, stirring up a strange fear. She swallowed hard and tried to keep her voice steady, though her hands were shaking just a little. "What do you mean? Is everything okay?" Keanu hesitated before answering. His eyes softened, but at the same time there was a flicker of pain behind them, something he was trying to hide but couldn't fully bury. "I don't know if it will be," he said slowly, "but I need you to hear me, and I need you to let me explain everything, even the parts that might hurt." Sandra felt a wave of old emotions rise inside her. Curiosity, fear, hope, and the familiar ache of unresolved things. She had spent years rebuilding her life, forming routines that kept her grounded, and training herself to let go of the version of the past that used to haunt her. She had learned to smile again, to trust again, but she had never quite learned how to forget him. And now he was here asking for something deeper than forgiveness, something she wasn't even sure she could give, the chance to open the past like a wound that had only just healed. She motioned toward the small table near the window. "Sit," she said quietly. "If you're going to tell me something important, I'd rather not hear it standing up." He gave her a small, grateful nod and walked to the table with slow, thoughtful steps. She noticed he was limping, not dramatically, but enough for her to see it. She felt her chest tighten. She wanted to ask him what happened, but she stayed silent, waiting for him to speak. She still didn't trust her voice. Outside, the morning light grew brighter, spilling through the window in soft gold streaks. People rushed past on their way to work, unaware that inside the bakery, two people were sitting down to face a truth that had been years in the making. Sandra sat across from him, her fingers intertwined in her lap, trying not to show how nervous she was. Keanu looked at the table for a long moment before lifting his eyes to hers again. "Before I tell you anything," he said gently, "I want you to know something. What happened between us wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I cared too much. But I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to be the man you deserved." Her breath caught in her throat. She had spent so long wondering if she had somehow been the one who wasn't enough. Hearing this now, even after all the time that had passed, sent a painful warmth through her chest. She tried to keep her voice calm. Keanu, I don't know what you came here to say, but you can't start by rewriting the past. We both made mistakes. He shook his head. I'm not rewriting anything. I'm owning what I failed to say back then. I walked away because I was scared, and because someone told me something I shouldn't have listened to. She blinked. Someone told you what? He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his voice low and steady. That I would only hold you back, that I would mess up your future, that I wasn't ready to be the man you needed, and I believed them. I believed it so much that I left without even asking you how you felt. Sandra stared at him, stunned. She had spent years assuming he'd left because he didn't love her enough or because their dreams didn't align. She never imagined someone else had interfered. Who told you that? She asked softly, feeling a strange mix of anger and confusion. Keanu hesitated again, and she could see the conflict on his face. Someone I trusted at the time, he said. Someone who said they wanted the best for me. Maybe they did, or maybe they were wrong. But what matters now is that I let their words become the truth in my mind, and it was the worst choice I ever made. Sandra felt the first sting of tears behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. She didn't want to cry, not yet. Why didn't you come back sooner? She whispered. Why now? Keanu looked down at his hands. For the first time, she noticed the bandage wrapped around his right wrist. Something inside her twisted sharply. He took a slow breath. Because I learned something last month, he said. Something that changed everything. Something that made me realize I've wasted years being afraid of the wrong things. Her heart pounded. Keanu, what did you learn? He looked up at her, and the depth in his eyes made her feel as if the entire world had narrowed down to this single moment. I learned, he said softly, that life is shorter than we think, and that if we don't tell the truth while we still can, we might never get the chance. Sandra felt the air leave her lungs in a rush. She leaned forward slightly, searching his face for clues, but he offered none. There was a silence between them, heavy and fragile. She could feel something big coming, something that would change the way she understood everything about him, everything about them. What do you mean? She asked carefully. Did something happen to you? Keanu nodded, but very slowly, as if saying yes too quickly might make the truth too real. Yes, he said. Something happened, something I wish I could tell you without hurting you. Sandra's stomach tightened. Keanu, you're scaring me. I know, he replied, and I'm sorry, but I need you to stay with me while I tell you this, because the truth is connected to why I left, to who told me to walk away, to what that person hid from both of us, and to what I only recently discovered. She sat frozen, not knowing whether she wanted him to keep going or stop altogether. Outside, a car horn honked. Someone laughed on the sidewalk. But inside the bakery, everything felt still and fragile, as if the world itself had paused to hear what he was about to say. He took a deep breath, then another, and just as he parted his lips to finally reveal the truth, the bakery door swung open, the bell ringing sharply, and a woman rushed inside, breathless and panicked, her eyes wide with fear as she looked straight at Keanu. You shouldn't be here, she said urgently. Keanu, we have a problem, a serious one. Sandra turned toward the woman, confused and taken aback. Keanu went pale, his jaw tensing as if he had been punched in the gut. The woman's presence was like a storm entering the room, sudden and heavy with threat. Not now, Keanu muttered, his voice low and strained. Please, not now. But the woman shook her head in a sharp, trembling motion. We don't have time, she insisted. They found out, they know you told her, and if you stay here any longer. Keanu reached out and grabbed her arm to stop her, but Sandra couldn't hear the rest of the sentence because her own heartbeat roared in her ears. What did she mean? Who found out? What danger was he talking about? And what was he planning to tell Sandra that someone else didn't want her to know? The woman looked from Keanu to Sandra with worry flooding her expression. I'm sorry, she whispered to Sandra. I never wanted you to be part of this. Sandra felt her throat tighten. Part of what? What's going on? Keanu stood up slowly, his face tense with determination and regret. He looked at Sandra the way someone looks at the one person they wish they could protect from everything, even the truth. Sandra, he said softly, I promise I'll explain everything. But right now I need you to trust me, and I need you to be careful, more careful than you've ever been. Her chest felt tight with fear and confusion. Keanu, please tell me what's happening. He opened his mouth, and then the woman grabbed his arm again, pulling him toward the door. We have to go, she insisted. If you stay, you're putting her at risk too. Keanu turned back to Sandra, his eyes filled with apology and something deeper, something that made her heart ache. I'm coming back, he said. I swear it, and when I do, I'll tell you everything, even the part I'm most afraid to say. Before she could respond, he was gone, pulled out the door and swallowed by the street. Sandra stood frozen in the silence he left behind, her breath shaking, her thoughts a tangled storm. And in that moment, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever Keanu had come to tell her, it wasn't just about the past. It was about something happening right now. And whatever it was far from over. Sandra stood alone in the center of her bakery long after Keanu and the mysterious woman had disappeared down the street, and the silence felt heavier than it ever had in her life. The freshly baked bread on the counter had stopped steaming, the coffee machine hummed quietly in the corner, and the world outside continued as if nothing unusual had happened. But inside her, everything had shifted. There was a strange tremble in her hands that wouldn't stop, and her heartbeat thudded against her ribs like it was trying to warn her of something she didn't yet understand. She replayed the moment again and again in her mind. The urgency in the woman's voice, the fear in Keanu's eyes, the warning that someone knew. He had told her something, even though he hadn't said anything yet. It made no sense. How could someone know he told her something when he hadn't told her anything at all? And what did it mean that staying in the bakery was dangerous for her? She didn't remember the last time she had felt fear this sharp and confusing, the kind that pulls your thoughts in too many directions at once. Sandra locked the bakery door, even though she still had hours before she usually opened. For the first time in years, she didn't feel safe behind the warm glow of the shop she had built with her own hands. She walked slowly to the same table where she and Keanu had sat just minutes earlier, the chairs still slightly pushed back from their bodies. She lowered herself into one of them, pressing her palms against the wooden surface to steady herself, her reflection faint in the polished finish. She wished she had asked more questions. She wished she had demanded answers before he ran out the door. But the look on his face, that haunted mixture of urgency, regret, and fear, it told her he wasn't leaving because he wanted to. He was leaving because he had no choice, and that terrified her more than anything else. Sandra's mind drifted back to years before, back to when she and Keanu had been close, before he disappeared from her life without explanation. She remembered how gentle he had always been, how he had spoken softly even when he was frustrated, how he had always put others before himself. That same kindness was still in his eyes when he looked at her today, but there was something else beneath it, something darker, something that suggested he'd been carrying a burden alone for far too long. Her breath grew heavy as she remembered how he said he left her because someone convinced him he wasn't good enough for her. That part hurt in ways she wasn't ready to unpack. It reopened a wound she had tried so hard to close, a wound made of questions that had never been answered. But even the pain of that truth was what scared her most right now. What scared her most was the unknown threat the woman had warned about. They found out, they know you told her. Those words looped through her mind like a chilling echo. Who were they? Why would they care what Keanu told her? And what kind of truth was so dangerous that it would put both of them at risk? Sandra took a long breath and stood, trying to push back the rising panic. She needed to think clearly. She needed to ground herself. She walked behind the counter, reached for a warm loaf of bread, and tore off a small piece. The familiar texture and smell calmed her slightly, reminding her of the world she understood, the one filled with dough and ovens and regular customers who smiled and asked about her day. But in this moment that world felt far away, replaced by uncertainty she never asked for. Her phone buzzed suddenly from the pocket of her apron. She flinched, her heart leaping into her throat. When she pulled the phone out and saw an unknown number flashing on the screen, her hands went cold. She hesitated before answering, but something inside her said she needed to. Hello, her voice sounded smaller than she intended. There was silence on the other end. For a moment she thought the call had dropped. Then a voice whispered, soft but trembling. Sandra, don't go anywhere, don't talk to anyone, and don't trust anyone who says they're here to help. I'm coming back for you. She froze, the voice was unmistakably Keanu's, strained, breathless, almost desperate. Keanu, wait, what's going on? Who's trying to hurt you? Why am I in danger? She said, gripping the phone tighter. But there was a crackling sound on the line, like interference, and his words were swallowed by a static she couldn't decipher. She pressed the phone harder to her ear, trying to catch the last fragments of his message. Don't trust her. She wasn't supposed to. I'm sorry. Please stay safe. The call ended abruptly. Sandra stared at the phone, her breath shaking. She didn't know whether the warning was about the woman who had dragged him out or someone else entirely. But she did know one thing: Keanu was scared, truly scared, and Keanu was not the kind of person who scared easily. She sank into a nearby chair, her mind spinning. She needed answers. She couldn't just sit here waiting for a danger she couldn't see. But at the same time, Keanu's voice had carried enough fear to make her trust him more than her own instincts. She pressed her palms to her forehead, trying to think. She needed to understand what he had been trying to tell her, something about the past, something about the person who convinced him to leave, something about a truth that had stayed hidden for years. As she sat there, the door suddenly shook. Someone was knocking, fast, loud, urgent. Her stomach twisted. She slowly rose from her chair and walked toward the front, careful not to make a sound. Through the glass, she could barely see a shadow. It wasn't Keanu. It wasn't the woman. It was someone else. The knocking grew louder, harder. "Sandra, are you inside? I need to talk to you. It's important." It was a man's voice, unfamiliar. She stepped closer to the door, her pulse racing. She didn't open it. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice firmer now. "My name is Paul," he said. "I work with Keanu." Her skin prickled. Keanu never mentioned anyone named Paul. She tightened her grip on the doorknob but didn't unlock it. "What do you want?" He leaned closer to the glass. She could finally see a man in his 40s with tired eyes and a neatly trimmed beard. He looked calm, but something about his expression felt off, too calm, too composed, like he was rehearsing it. "I need to take you somewhere safe," he said. "Keanu asked me to." Her instincts screamed at her. The way he said Keanu's name felt wrong, like he was trying to latch onto the familiarity without really knowing him. And the word safe was said too softly, like a salesman trying to close a deal. She shook her head. "I'm not going anywhere with you." His jaw tightened slightly, the first crack in his polite expression. "Sandra, listen," he said. "You don't understand what's happening. You're in danger, serious danger. If you stay here alone, none of us can protect you." She took a slow step back away from the door. "Who are you really?" she asked. His eyes flickered. "I already told you I'm—" "No," she interrupted. "Who are you to Keanu?" For the first time, he hesitated. A long moment passed, too long for someone telling the truth. Finally, he said, "I can explain everything, just open the door." She shook her head again. "Not until I talk to Keanu." His eyes hardened. Keanu is in no position to talk right now. Her stomach dropped. Why not? He gave a slow, deliberate exhale, as though choosing his next words carefully. "Because the same people who want to hurt him now want to hurt you." Her breath caught in her chest, but before she could react, he placed one hand gently against the door, leaning closer. "Open the door, Sandra, please." She stared at him, and the air between them felt thick with tension. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong. Then her phone buzzed again. The man's eyes flicked to her pocket, and in that tiny shift, barely a second, she saw something dark in his expression. Something that didn't belong on the face of someone who came to help. She grabbed her phone quickly and stepped back, keeping her eyes locked on him as she answered. "Sandra," Keanu's voice whispered, hoarse and shaky. "Whatever you do, don't open that door." Every part of her froze. "Keanu," she whispered back, her voice trembling. "He's saying you sent him." "I didn't," Keanu said immediately. "He's not who he says he is." Her blood ran cold. "He works for them." The man outside tapped on the glass, his face still calm, but his eyes sharper now, watching her every move. "I'm coming to you," Keanu said. "Don't talk to him, don't let him inside. I'm almost there." "How close?" she whispered, glancing nervously at the shadow behind the door. "2 minutes," he replied. "Just stay away from the door." The man must have sensed a shift, because his voice grew firmer, losing its rehearsed politeness. "Sandra, unlocked the door. We don't have time for this." She didn't move. "Sandra," Keanu said urgently into the phone, "listen to me. This is bigger than you think. There are things I never told you, things I should have told you years ago, and now you're caught in the middle of it. But I'm not letting anything happen to you, not this time, not again." Tears prickled at her eyes, but she held herself steady. "You left because someone lied to you," she whispered. "Was it him? Was he the one who told you to stay away from me?" On the other end of the line, she heard Keanu inhale sharply. Sandra, yes, he's one of them. Her knees almost buckled. The man outside knocked again, this time more forcefully. Open the door, he said, his voice no longer hiding the threat beneath the surface. Then Sandra heard something outside, footsteps approaching fast. The man stiffened, his head snapping toward the sound. For the first time, fear flashed across his face. He's early, the man muttered. Her heart pounded so hard, she thought it might break her ribs. Sandra, Keanu said urgently, move away from the front, now. She backed away from the door just as a voice outside shouted, don't touch that door. Keanu. The man outside cursed under his breath and stepped back. But it was too late. Everything was about to collide. And in that terrifying, breathless moment, Sandra realized something she hadn't understood before. Whatever Keanu had been hiding from her, whatever truth he had walked away from years ago, was dangerous enough that people were chasing him now. Dangerous enough that they had come for her too. Dangerous enough that the past she thought she understood was about to shatter completely. And Keanu's next words, spoken through the phone and through the glass as he ran toward the bakery, hit her like a tidal wave she wasn't ready for. Sandra, the person who told me to leave you, the one who lied to both of us, wasn't just someone I trusted. It was someone close to you. Her breath stopped, but he didn't get to finish the sentence. Because the man outside lunged. And everything exploded into chaos the moment the man lunged toward the door. Everything seemed to move both too fast and impossibly slow. Sandra watched his body tense like a coiled spring, and her instincts fired at once, telling her to run, to hide, to do anything except stand there staring at the danger sprinting toward her bakery like a storm that had finally broken open. She stumbled backward, her hand knocking into a stack of pastry boxes on the counter as the bell over the door rattled violently. She could hear Keanu's voice outside, shouting something she couldn't fully make out, but the tone told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't just fear, this was desperation. The man slammed his shoulder against the locked door, making the glass tremble. Sandra gasped and retreated farther into the bakery, her breath coming in panicked waves. She heard Keanu yelling her name, his footsteps pounding harder and faster, a sound full of urgency and something deeper, something like regret mixed with fury. The man hit the door again, and this time the wooden frame creaked. Sandra could see the raw determination in his eyes through the glass, a determination that made her blood run cold. She darted behind the counter, dropping to the floor and crawling into the narrow space between the cupboard and the wall. It wasn't much of a hiding spot, but in that moment she wasn't thinking with logic, only instinct and fear. The door rattled again, and she squeezed her eyes shut, trying to steady her breathing even though her heart felt like it was trying to escape her chest. She clutched her phone to her ear, but the call had disconnected during the chaos, leaving her alone with only the muffled sounds of the struggle outside. Sandra, Keanu called out again, his voice sharp with fear. She could hear him closer now, much closer. Then a heavy thud, the sound of two bodies colliding, followed by a choked grunt. She couldn't see what was happening, only imagine, and her imagination painted the worst possible pictures. She pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from crying out. She didn't want to distract him. She didn't want to make things worse. The world outside the bakery door exploded with noise, more grunts, the scrape of shoes against pavement, the shattering sound of something hitting the sidewalk. Her breath hitched as she tried to listen through the pounding in her ears. She could hear Keanu's voice again, strained but determined, telling the man to back off, to leave her alone, to stop this before it got worse. But the other man only spoke once, his voice colder than before, and though she couldn't hear the exact words, she heard his tone. It was the tone of someone who felt no fear, no guilt, no hesitation. Then everything went quiet. Too quiet. Sandra felt her stomach twist in a painful knot. She pressed her back against the wall, the cool surface grounding her for a moment. She waited, counting the seconds in her mind, each one heavier than the last. She didn't know if the silence meant safety or danger or something in between. She didn't know if Keanu had won whatever fight had broken out, or if the silence was the kind that comes right before something worse. After what felt like hours but was likely only seconds, Sandra heard a soft tapping at the window. She froze. Her entire body stiffened and she pressed herself deeper into the shadows. She didn't dare look. She didn't dare move. She didn't know whether it was Keanu or the man or someone else entirely. Sandra, a voice whispered, barely audible through the glass. It's me, it's Keanu, please open the door. She hesitated, her breath caught halfway between trust and fear. She didn't move from her hiding place. She didn't want to fall for a trick. She didn't want to expose herself too soon. "I know you're scared," Keanu said softly, his voice weakening at the edges. "I know this is too much, but I need you to stand up and look at me. Please, I'm hurt." Her heart dropped like a stone. She slowly crawled out from behind the counter, her knees trembling beneath her. She lifted her head just enough to see through the glass. Keanu was standing there, holding his side, blood on his shirt. His breathing was uneven and heavy, and pain carved deep lines across his face. Behind him, the man who had tried to force his way inside was nowhere to be seen. Sandra didn't know if he had run or if something else had happened to him, but seeing Keanu injured swept away every flicker of hesitation inside her. She rushed to the door, unlocked it with shaky hands, and pulled it open. Keanu nearly collapsed forward, and she caught his arm, guiding him gently inside. "Sit down," she whispered, her voice trembling with panic and tenderness. "Please sit." He nodded, his face pale, and she helped him to the same table where they had sat earlier. He winced with every movement, pressing his hand firmly against his ribs. "Keanu, you're hurt," she said, her voice cracking. "You're bleeding." "It's not as bad as it looks," he tried to say, but even through his attempt at calm, she could hear the pain. See it in the way he gritted his teeth. "What happened?" she whispered. "Where is he? Why was he trying to get in here?" Keanu didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at her with an expression she had never seen on him before, an expression filled with guilt, fear, and something much older than either of them. Something he had been carrying for years. "Sandra," he said softly, "I'm so sorry. You should never have been dragged into this. I left you years ago because someone lied to me. Someone told me I wasn't good enough for you, that I would ruin your future, that I needed to disappear before I held you back." She swallowed hard. Hearing it again hurt even more than the first time. "But the person who told me all of that," he continued, "wasn't who I thought. They weren't trying to protect you. They weren't trying to protect me either. They were trying to control something much bigger." Her eyebrows drew together in confusion. She didn't want to interrupt, but she didn't understand. Not yet. Keanu took a slow, painful breath. "The person who told me to leave," he said at last, "was someone you trusted, someone close to you, someone who didn't want us together for reasons they never told either of us." Sandra felt her entire body go still. "Someone close to me," she echoed quietly. "Who?" Keanu looked away, as if saying the name out loud physically hurt him. "Your brother," he whispered. Sandra felt the world tilt on its axis. Her knees weakened, and she lowered herself into the chair across from him, staring at him in disbelief. Her brother. The same brother who had always claimed to look out for her. The same brother who had always insisted that Keanu wasn't the right person for her, but had never said why. The same brother who had disappeared from her life 2 years ago after a sudden argument they never resolved. "No," she whispered, shaking her head slowly. "No, that can't be right. My brother he wouldn't do something like that." "He did," Keanu said softly. "And it wasn't just his words. He was working with people who wanted to separate us. People who wanted control over him, over me, and over something he was involved in years before you ever knew." Sandra tried to speak, but her throat closed. Nothing came out. The shock hit her so hard she felt physically dizzy. Her brother had always been protective, yes, sometimes overprotective, but cruel, manipulative, involved in something dangerous. She didn't want to believe it. She couldn't believe it. And yet part of her remembered the way he had looked at Keanu back then, the way something sharp flickered in his eyes when Keanu wasn't looking. She had ignored it at the time, thinking it was just sibling emotions, just worry or jealousy. But now that memory returned with new meaning, and she felt cold all over. "Why?" she whispered finally. "Why would he do that? What could he possibly gain?" Keanu hesitated, and she sensed he was holding something back. Not because he wanted to, but because telling her felt like placing a weight on her shoulders he didn't want her to carry. "Your brother got involved with the wrong people," he said. "The same people who came after me, the same people who want something from both of us. He made a deal he couldn't break, and part of that deal involved separating you and me." Sandra pressed her hands to her mouth as tears began to gather in her eyes. She didn't want to cry, not now, not when the danger was still so close, but she couldn't stop the way the truth cut into her. Her brother had lied to her for years. He had chosen something else, someone else, over her happiness. And now his choices had put her and Keanu in danger. Where is he now? She whispered. Where is my brother? Keanu looked at her with a sadness she had never seen on anyone's face before. That's the part I wasn't ready to tell you, he said quietly, and the part your brother never wanted you to find out. Her breath caught. Keanu leaned forward slightly despite the pain, his voice dropping even softer. Your brother didn't disappear because he wanted to, he said. He disappeared because he tried to get out, and these people, they don't let anyone walk away. Sandra's pulse pounded so hard, she thought the whole room could hear it. What are you saying? She whispered. Keanu swallowed hard. I'm saying, he said, that your brother didn't walk out of your life. He paused. He was taken. Sandra felt her world shatter. And before she could process a single piece of the truth, the back door of the bakery creaked open. Very slowly. Keanu's eyes widened in instant alarm. Sandra turned toward the sound, her breath frozen in her chest. Someone else was inside. The sound of the back door creaking open hit Sandra like a bolt of lightning. She froze, her breath locked inside her chest. Keanu's eyes widened in alarm, and he forced himself upright even though he was still holding his ribs, still bleeding, still barely steady on his feet. Every part of the bakery fell into a heavy silence, the kind that felt too thick to breathe through. Sandra didn't move. She didn't blink. She was afraid that even the smallest sound would draw the attention of whoever had just stepped inside. The quiet footsteps that followed were slow, steady, and deliberate. They weren't hurried like someone fleeing danger. They weren't clumsy like someone unfamiliar with the space. They were measured, like someone who knew exactly where they were, exactly why they were there, and exactly who they had come for. Sandra clutched the edge of the table. Her legs shook beneath her. She wasn't ready for any of this. She wasn't ready to face another stranger, not after the man at the front door, not after the chaos that had already happened. She wasn't built for this kind of danger. She baked bread. She decorated cakes. She spent her days smiling at customers and wiping flour from her apron. She didn't know how to protect herself from whatever world Keanu had brought back into her life. Keanu turned slightly in the direction of the door, wincing as pain shot through him. He whispered just loud enough for her to hear, "Sandra, get behind me." She shook her head, tears threatening her vision. "You can't even stand," she whispered. "You're hurt, you." He looked at her with a determination that silenced the rest of her words. "I don't care," he said. "You stay behind me." The footsteps grew closer, echoing faintly against the tiled floor at the back of the bakery. Sandra had never realized how loud footsteps could be when wrapped in tension and silence. She slowly stepped behind Keanu, even though she knew it wasn't fair, even though he could barely protect himself. But some part of her trusted him more than she trusted her own panic. The figure finally stepped into view. Sandra's breath escaped her lungs in a sharp gasp. It wasn't the man who had attacked them earlier. It wasn't a stranger. It was a woman. She appeared in the doorway wearing jeans and a faded coat, her hair tied loosely at the back of her head, her face lined with exhaustion and worry. She looked like someone who had spent far too long running, far too long hiding, far too long carrying secrets she could no longer hold. And Sandra recognized her. Her heart twisted painfully. It was her brother's old friend, Lena. Lena, who used to come by the house when Sandra and her brother were younger. Lena, who had always been quiet but kind. Lena, who had disappeared from their lives at the same time her brother did. Sandra hadn't seen her in years. She thought the woman had simply moved away or lost touch. But seeing her now, with shadows beneath her eyes and worry etched deep into her face, Sandra knew none of this was coincidence. "Lena," she whispered, her voice trembling. Keanu stiffened beside her, clearly recognizing the name. Lena didn't smile, didn't approach, didn't say hello. Instead, she raised her hand slowly, showing she meant no harm, and spoke in a soft but urgent voice. "Sandra, I need you to listen to me very carefully." Keanu stepped slightly in front of Sandra despite his pain. "She's not safe here," he said quietly, his voice strained. "Lena, if they followed you—" "They didn't," Lena cut in quickly. "I made sure of it. I wouldn't have come if I wasn't certain." Sandra's legs nearly gave out. She looked from Keanu to Lena, confusion swirling in her mind. "What is happening?" she whispered. "Why are you here? My brother, Keanu, said he was taken. Is that why you disappeared too? What do these people want? Why are they after us?" Lena took a slow step forward, her eyes softening with guilt. "Yes," she said, Your brother was taken, and I disappeared because I tried to help him. She looked down, her voice cracking slightly. And because I failed. Sandra felt tears burn at the edges of her eyes. What do you mean, failed? She whispered. Is he alive? Yes, Lena said, lifting her gaze, but not for much longer if we don't act. The words hit Sandra like a physical blow. Her knees buckled and she gripped the table to stay upright. Keanu reached out instinctively to steady her, his voice soft. Sandra, breathe. I know this is too much, but we're going to get him back. She looked at him, her eyes full of panic and disbelief. How? She whispered. We don't even know where he is. Lena's expression tightened. I do. Keanu turned sharply toward her. How? He demanded. You told me you didn't know where they took him. I didn't, Lena said. Not until now. She reached slowly into her coat, Keanu tense and ready to move at any sign of threat, and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. She placed it gently on the table. I found this yesterday, Lena said, her voice heavy. And I think your brother wanted you to find it. Sandra hesitated before picking up the paper. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. Inside was a shaky, uneven, handwritten message. The writing was messy, as if written in the dark or under pressure. The message read, I tried to stop them. I tried to protect you. Don't trust the man with the beard. Don't trust anyone from the old group. Keanu was right. You are in danger now. If Lena finds you, go with her. She knows where to take you. Don't come after me alone. And Sandra, please forgive me. Her heart shattered. Keanu lowered his head, as if the weight of the words pressed against his own chest. Lena placed a hand over her mouth, fighting tears she didn't want to show. Sandra couldn't speak at first. She felt as if her throat had closed completely. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes, spilling over her lashes and running down her cheeks. She read the note again, and it hurt worse every time. Her brother had known this entire time. He had tried to protect her. He had tried to warn her. And now he feared for her life. This isn't fair, she whispered, her voice breaking. He shouldn't have had to go through this alone. None of you should have. Lena nodded slowly. We know, she said softly. But your brother thought keeping you away from all of this was the best way to protect you. He thought keeping the truth hidden would keep you safe. Sandra wiped her tears with the back of her hand. All this time, she whispered, I thought he left because he didn't care, because he didn't want to be around anymore. Keanu shook his head. He cared too much. The weight of everything pressed heavily onto Sandra's shoulders. She had questions, so many questions, but before she could ask them, a sudden sound shattered the fragile quiet. Car tires screeching outside. Keanu's head snapped up, Lena's face drained of color. They heard doors slamming. Heavy footsteps approaching. Too many to count. They found us, Lena whispered, her voice trembling for the first time. Keanu stumbled to his feet, his eyes locked on Sandra with fierce determination. We have to move, he said urgently. Now. Sandra's heart pounded violently in her chest. Where do we go? Lena reached for her hand. Your brother told me the only safe place left, but we need to leave before they get inside. We don't have time to plan. We run, now. But Sandra hesitated for one single moment, the last moment she had before everything changed again. Because the voice that rang out from outside froze her blood completely. A man calling her name. Her brother's name. And one she had prayed she would never hear again. Sandra, the voice shouted, open up, we know you're in there. Lena grabbed her arm. Don't move, she whispered urgently. That's not your brother. Keanu's face hardened. It's them. Sandra's breath vanished. The doorknob at the front of the bakery began to turn. And they had only seconds left the moment the front doorknob began to turn. Sandra felt the air leave her lungs as if someone had reached inside and stolen every breath she had left. Keanu moved in front of her despite the pain racking his body, his hand bracing the edge of the table to steady himself. Lena grabbed Sandra's arm firmly, pulling her back toward the rear of the bakery, her voice barely above a whisper but sharp with urgency. We have to go right now. The doorknob shook harder, twisting left and right as the person outside grew frustrated. Sandra could hear more footsteps approaching behind the first. They weren't trying to hide their presence anymore. They had numbers, they had confidence, and they had come here expecting to end something. Keanu gritted his teeth and motioned toward the back exit. Go, both of you. I'll hold them off long enough for. No, Sandra said immediately, panic ripping through her voice. You're hurt. You can barely stand. I'm not leaving you. We don't have time for this, Lena snapped softly, though her voice trembled. Keanu, you're not staying behind. You won't last 5 seconds. We move together, all of us. The pounding on the front door intensified. Sandra didn't have to see the men to know they were big, angry, and determined. One of them shouted her name again, the voice dripping with something mocking and taunting. Sandra, open up. We aren't here to hurt you. We just want to talk. The lie clung to the air like poison. Keanu scoffed painfully. They always say that. Lena pulled Sandra harder. Move now. They raced toward the back hallway, Keanu limping behind them but refusing to slow down. Sandra's heart pounded so fast she felt faint. She had never run from anyone in her life. She had never hidden from anyone either. Her days were filled with flour, customers, tinkling bells, and soft background music. Nothing in her world had prepared her for this. As they neared the back door, Sandra glanced over her shoulder, just in time to see the front door burst open. It shattered inward, splintering wood across the floor, and several men surged inside. The first one she saw was tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a dark jacket that made him look even more threatening. His eyes swept the room quickly, landing on the back hallway with predatory precision. There, he shouted, don't let them get out. Lena yanked the back door open and pushed Sandra through. Keanu stumbled after them just as something heavy crashed against the front counter, knocking trays of pastries onto the floor. The men were moving fast, too fast. The alley behind the bakery smelled of rain-soaked concrete, garbage bins, and the faint scent of cinnamon drifting from the open door. The narrow walls echoed with their footsteps as they bolted down the path, Lena leading, Sandra in the middle, Keanu right behind her. Sandra could hear the men charging after them, their footsteps growing closer with each second. Take a right, Lena called, breathless. They turned sharply, barely keeping their balance. The alley opened to a small side street, a rare pocket of softness in the city, but even that didn't last. A black car screeched around the corner at the far end, its tires spinning on wet asphalt. Lena grabbed Sandra's arm again. Run back this way. They're circling us, Keanu muttered, voice strained with pain and anger. They planned this. You think I don't know that? Lena shot back, her fear barely contained. But they don't know the route I prepared. We still have a chance. Another man emerged from the side of a dumpster, lunging toward them, but Keanu shoved Sandra aside, taking the hit himself. He staggered, gripping the attacker's arm, twisting it sharply. The man yelped in pain and stumbled back, giving them a precious few seconds. Go, Keanu said through gritted teeth. Run. Sandra felt torn in two, one part screaming to stay with him, the other pulling her forward. Lena didn't give her a choice and pulled her again, forcing her legs into motion. Keanu limped after them, slower than before, each step a battle against pain. They darted across the street just as the black car sped closer. Lena shoved Sandra behind a row of trash cans, pulled Keanu beside them, and the car flew past, its windows tinted, its engine roaring. Sandra's chest heaved. How do they keep finding us? How do they know where we are? Lena wiped sweat from her forehead, her eyes scanning their surroundings like a hunted animal. Because your brother was part of them before he tried to escape. They know how he thinks. They know how he moves. They know how he plans. Her voice tightened. And they think Keanu helped him get away the first time. Keanu let out a humorless laugh. I did, and if I had known what was coming, I would have taken both of them with me. Sandra felt the words pierce her. You helped him, she whispered. You never told me. Keanu met her eyes, pain and regret woven deeply into his expression. I couldn't tell you. He begged me not to. He didn't want you dragged into this world. Sandra's heart twisted, but I'm in it anyway. Keanu lowered his head. I know. Lena peered toward the corner of the alley. We need to move. They'll loop back. Follow me. They slipped through a narrow gap between buildings into another alley, this one darker, quieter, almost forgotten. Lena led them toward the back entrance of an old, abandoned warehouse. The door groaned as she pushed it open, dust swirling in the stale air inside. In here, Lena said, it's safer than being on the street, at least for a moment. They moved inside, and Lena shut the door behind them, securing it with an iron bar resting near the frame. The small warehouse was dimly lit, cluttered with crates, rusted metal shelves, and broken machinery. It looked like no one had been inside for years. Keanu leaned against a crate, holding his side, his breathing shallow. Sandra quickly knelt beside him. "You need help," she said. "You can't keep moving like this." "We'll fix him up," Lena said, searching through an old toolbox for anything useful. "This place still has supplies from when your brother used it." Sandra jerked her head up. This was his place. Lena nodded. "One of them." The weight of everything pressed down on Sandra's chest until she felt suffocated. She sat back on her heels, pressing trembling fingers to her forehead. "Why didn't he tell me any of this? Why did he keep so many secrets? We could have helped him." Keanu looked at her, his voice soft. "He did it to protect you." "By lying to me," she whispered, her eyes burning. "By pushing me away, by telling you to leave me." Keanu looked down. "He never wanted to tell me that, but they forced him. They threatened you. He was trying to save your life." Sandra's breath caught in her throat. "Save my life from what?" Silence fell between them, thick and heavy. Lena stopped rummaging through the toolbox. Her hands dropped to her sides, and her face turned solemn as she looked at Sandra. "Sandra," she said quietly, "there's something you don't know about your family, something your brother never had the courage to tell you, something he thought he could hide forever." Sandra felt her heart slam against her ribs. "What do you mean?" "The people after us," Lena said softly. "They didn't come for your brother because of something he did." Keanu looked up quickly, as if wishing Lena would stop, but it was too late. She had already begun the truth Sandra never expected. "They came for him," Lena continued, "because of something your father did years before you were born." The words struck Sandra with the force of a falling building. "My father," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "He died when I was a baby. He couldn't have." Lena shook her head. "He didn't die the way you think he did, and the people chasing us, they're tied to what he left behind." Sandra's eyes filled with confusion and fear. What did he leave behind? Keanu looked at her with deep regret. "Something," he said softly, "that they're willing to kill for." Before Sandra could process any of it, before she could even form a single question, a loud crash echoed from outside the warehouse, followed by voices, followed by footsteps. They had been found. Again the loud crash outside the warehouse echoed through the empty space like thunder, shaking dust loose from the rafters and sending Sandra's heart spiraling into panic. Keanu pushed himself upright despite the sharp pain twisting across his ribs, while Lena rushed to the window, her fingers trembling as she pulled back a sliver of the dirty curtain. Her eyes widened at what she saw outside. "They're surrounding the building," Lena whispered, her voice tight with fear. "More than before, they must have tracked the route I took." Keanu's jaw clenched. "They were always going to find us. They want Sandra, and they want what her father left behind." Sandra felt her pulse hammer against her ribs. She had never imagined her father, a man who had died before she could form a single memory of his face, could somehow be tied to the danger now closing in around her. She hugged her arms around herself, struggling to breathe. "Tell me," she whispered, her voice barely stable. "Please, no more secrets. What did my father do? What did he leave behind that they want?" Lena turned toward her, her expression softening with guilt and sorrow. She stepped closer, lowering her voice as the footsteps outside grew louder. "Sandra," Lena began, "your father wasn't just an ordinary man. He was part of a research group years ago, a group that discovered something powerful, something that could be used for good or for terrible things." Sandra frowned. "Research group? What kind of research?" Lena exchanged a glance with Keanu before answering. "A formula," Lena said, "for a new kind of energy source. Clean, renewable, and stronger than anything the world had ever seen. Your father helped create it. But he realized too late that the wrong people were getting involved. They wanted to weaponize it, to twist it into something dangerous." Keanu nodded. "So he hid it. He buried the formula and disappeared, but he didn't just vanish. He left clues, pieces of the formula scattered and locked away." Sandra stared at them both, her heartbeat frantic. "But why me? What does that have to do with me?" Keanu stepped forward, his voice gentle. "Because before he died, he placed the final piece of the formula in a place only his family could access. A lock coded to your genetics. Your brother found out first. That's why they took him. They wanted him to bring them to you." Sandra felt the air freeze around her. "So, I'm the key. I'm the reason they're chasing us." "Yes," Lena said softly. "And your brother did everything he could to keep them from realizing that. He tried to convince them that the formula didn't exist anymore, that there was nothing left to find, that you were just living a simple life, unaware of any of this." "But they didn't believe him," Keanu added quietly, "and now they're here." The footsteps outside grew louder, closer, more aggressive. Someone pounded on the warehouse door, rattling the metal frame so violently the entire structure shook. Sandra flinched, her chest tightening as the noise echoed through her bones. "Sandra," a voice shouted from outside. "Don't make this harder, come out now and we'll let the others go." It was a lie, Sandra knew it immediately. The tone was too cold, too calculated. They weren't here to bargain. They were here to take what they believed she held inside her very existence. Keanu stepped in front of her again, even though he could barely stand straight. "Don't listen to them," he whispered. "They don't care who gets hurt." Lena moved quickly toward the side wall, pulling away an old cloth tarp covering a metal hatch. "Your brother prepared this," she said urgently. "It leads to a maintenance tunnel. We can escape before they break through." Keanu shook his head. "They'll have people on the other end. This place is surrounded. We can't outrun all of them." Lena's face tightened. "So what do? We can't fight them, not like this." Keanu looked at Sandra, really looked at her. His eyes full of exhaustion, pain, regret, and love all tangled together. "We give them what they're really after," he said softly. Sandra's chest tightened. "Me," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "No, not you, the truth." Lena frowned deeply. "Keanu, no, you can't." "I have to," he said. "Your father entrusted me with something before he died, something he didn't want falling into the wrong hands." Sandra blinked in shock. "My father entrusted you, but you never knew him." Keanu swallowed hard. "He left a message, when he asked someone else to deliver when the time was right, and that person found me years after I walked away from you." Sandra stared at him, her pulse racing. "What message?" Keanu lifted his hand and pointed to the side of his jacket, specifically to the inside pocket near his chest. "The real final piece," he whispered. "Your father didn't hide it with you, he hid it in someone who could protect you." Lena gasped. "Keanu, you never told me you had it." "I couldn't," he said softly. "Your brother made me promise. He said if I told anyone, even you or Sandra, the wrong people would find out. And they did. They've been chasing me ever since I confirmed that I had it." The pounding at the door grew louder. Angrier, Sandra's breath grew shallow. "What is it exactly?" she whispered. "What did he give you?" Keanu slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out a small metal capsule. It was no bigger than a thumb, but intricately detailed, with markings carved around its surface that Sandra didn't recognize. "This," he said, "is the final code. Without it, the formula is useless. With it, the world could change." Lena stepped back, fear and awe mixing in her eyes. "Keanu, if they take that." "They won't," he said, "because I'm not letting them." Sandra felt tears rising in her eyes. "But you can't face them alone," she whispered. "You'll die, and I can't lose you, not again." Keanu looked at her with a softness that broke her heart. "Sandra, I'm not leaving you again, not ever, but I need you to trust me. We end this here." The warehouse door groaned under another heavy hit, the hinges bending. They were seconds away from breaking through. Keanu pressed the metal capsule into Sandra's hands. "Destroy it," he said. "Now, before they come inside. If the formula dies, they have no reason to chase you anymore." Sandra stared at the capsule, her hands trembling violently. I don't know how." "Break it," Keanu urged. "Hit it against the floor, stomp on it, do whatever you have to. It's made to shatter when enough pressure is applied." The metal screamed as the door bent inward. Sandra's panic rose. "Do it, Sandra," Lena whispered. "Your brother wanted this. He wanted you safe. He wanted to end this." Sandra lifted the capsule, her fingers shaking uncontrollably. She raised it above the concrete floor, closed her eyes, and slammed it down. But before it hit, Keanu suddenly grabbed her wrist. "Wait," he whispered. Her eyes flew open in shock. "What?" Keanu's voice dropped to a trembling whisper. "Listen." Outside, the pounding had stopped. Silence swallowed the warehouse. Then a voice called out, broken, strained, gasping. "Sandra, it's me." Her heart froze. It was her brother's voice. Keanu's face fell, Lena's knees buckled. Sandra felt the floor tilt beneath her. She ran toward the front entrance, and despite Keanu and Lena shouting after her, she pulled aside the curtain from the shattered window. Her brother stood outside, bruised, exhausted, barely standing, held by two men on either side, but alive. His eyes found hers instantly, full of pain and apology. "Don't give it to them," he said. "Don't trust what they say. Whatever they're promising, it's a lie." Sandra choked on a sob. "I thought you were gone," she whispered. He shook his head weakly. "They've been using me to find you. I escaped, but they caught me again. I couldn't warn you in time." One of the men holding him stepped forward, voice cold. "Sandra, you open that door or we break what's left of it, and this time we don't keep him alive." Keanu stepped beside Sandra, his voice steady. "They won't kill him. He knows too much." The man smirked. "Then maybe we take the girl instead." Sandra stepped back instinctively. Keanu grabbed her hand tightly. "Sandra, listen to me. You can't let them win. You can't let them get the formula. Your father trusted you. Your brother risked everything for you. Whatever happens next, don't let it be for nothing." Sandra looked at the capsule in her hand. The voices outside grew louder. Keanu's grip tightened. Her brother shouted her name again. The metal capsule felt heavy enough to crush her heart. And then, with tears streaming down her face, her breath shaking, and her entire body trembling, Sandra made her choice. She raised the capsule high and slammed it to the ground with all her strength. It shattered instantly, splintering into a burst of metal fragments that scattered across the concrete like broken stars. Outside, the men shouted in rage. Her brother collapsed to his knees. Lena gasped. Keanu exhaled in both relief and exhaustion. The formula was gone. The power her father left behind had died with that capsule. And the danger it carried died with it. The men outside banged on the door again, but this time with no purpose, no advantage, no leverage. Sandra had taken everything from them. They couldn't use her. They couldn't use her brother. They couldn't use Keanu. The weapon they wanted no longer existed. Sirens suddenly wailed in the distance. "Police." Lena looked shocked. "They must have triggered too much noise. Someone in the area called it in. They'll run." And they did. The men scattered like shadows, dragging Sandra's brother away, but not before he looked at her with a kind of pride she had never seen before. "You did the right thing," he mouthed. Keanu wrapped an arm around Sandra as she fell to her knees. Lena knelt beside them, tears shining in her eyes. The sirens grew louder, closer. The danger faded like smoke. Later that night, after statements were given, after ambulances treated wounds, after the warehouse was sealed off, Sandra found herself sitting beside Keanu on the steps of her bakery. His head rested gently on her shoulder. Lena stood nearby with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, staring down the quiet street. Sandra looked at Keanu and whispered, "Are they gone?" He nodded softly. "For now, maybe for good. Without the formula, they have nothing left to chase." She took his hand, her thumb brushing over his skin. "You didn't leave me this time." He shook his head, "And I won't again." Tears gathered in her eyes. "We lost the formula, my father's legacy." "No," Keanu said gently. "You saved the world from it. Maybe your father wanted that more than anything." She leaned into him, closing her eyes. "What happens now?" He breathed softly, his voice warm against the night air. "Now," he whispered, "we start over together." Sandra reached for his hand, and for the first time in years, she felt something she thought she had lost forever. Peace. And behind her, the bakery sign flickered gently in the quiet glow of evening, as if welcoming a new beginning. The past was finally behind them, and the future, whatever shape it would take, was finally theirs to write.